like that. I mean, I punched the red light and everything.
Hello X-Factory friends and family, this is Paul Sinclair with another voiceover video. Wait, what's he doing on the camera? This is a voiceover, this ain't a video. What's going on? We'll get there folks. You will hear my voice over some video, okay? Trust me. This video actually, we're going to take a look at the challenge video that X-Factory uploaded a couple days ago and posted on our Facebook page, where we asked you guys to take a look at the video, the very same video that team manager Billy Mouse and I had used in the pits at the J-Concepts Invitational race hosted by the RC Clubhouse. The very same video that Billy and I had used in the pits to evaluate my X6 Cubed and make some changes for the next round of invite racing. In that video, I think there were some things that my X6 Cube did really well, and I think there were some things that didn't work so well. And we're going to dive into that and tell you guys then about the changes that we made. And I can tell you right away that I was able to win the next round of Invitational. And I got several comments from really experienced racers that my X6 Cube looked really, really good on the track in the final round of two-wheel drive racing. So before we dive into it, though, we got to give some backstory because it affects the changes we made up to that race and the changes we made afterwards. And that is, I got to tell you guys about the tires. So the Invitational race, we ran handout tires. Specifically, we ran these are the tires that were on my two-wheel drive buggy in that video. J-Concepts Gold Dirt Webs, which are the tire of choice at the RC Clubhouse. But of course, we had to run the open cell foam that comes in the tires. And what I have here, this is again the tire that I was running in that round 4 race that we posted. And here's a tire with a molded foam that I club race on, that I run all the time. This has the J-Concepts, the new Dirt Tech foams that feel really good. And we're going to talk about, of course, the molded foam, or the open cell foams are much softer. If I hold the foams out and try to squeeze with an equal pressure, you can see just how much that open cell foam gives in compared to the closed cell. But there's also there's a more subtle difference between these two tires. If I take the molded foam here and I push on the sidewall, you can see that there's nice pressure by the carcass. The carcass provides some stiffness in the corner. But then as my finger rolls from the sidewall onto the tread, as though the tire was going through a corner, that molded foam supports my finger all the way across, and that contact patch has an even pressure to it. With the open cell foam, we still see that same sidewall stiffness. This feels pretty good. But when my tire rolls across, it dives in to the carcass. The tire collapses once I get past that initial push on the sidewall. And what do you say? So I had made some adjustments. Going into the event, I had some limited practice. I showed up a little late on Friday, which was open practice day, and I mounted up. Of course, you get your handout tires at the race, and I'd mounted up my J-Concepts Dirt Webs, and I went out on them, and frankly, my X6 was pretty bad my first couple of practice runs. Now, of course, you're breaking in the tires. Brand new tires out of the package for indoor racing aren't usually very good, but I could tell that the front of the car was overloading the open cell front foams going into the corner, and the car was pushing out. And then the rear would dump over. Like I'd enter the corner, I would enter the corner with so much force that the rear of the car the front would push out, and then the rear of the car would dump over and slide. And it resulted in what I like to call a push-loose car, a car that pushes going in, and then once it finally dumps, it wants to spin around on you and feels loose, which is kind of the worst of all possible worlds. So again, with limited practice, I had gone back, I changed my entire setup to what I ran at the J-Concepts Invitational race last year. I just, I don't want to call it getting rid of a year of development, but I said, okay, my car was really good last year on stock foam tires. It's not very good now. I'm going to go back to what I had last year. The major difference is, and again, this is all before the video that you guys saw, that round 4 video. The major differences were a much softer front spring. I went from an Associated Gray 3.45 rate to a low-C, low-frequency orange spring, which I believe is around a 3.00 rate. Someone will probably correct me if I'm wrong. And then I went to a stiffer spring in the back. I went from a low-C, low-frequency white on my, on my current club setup, back to a low-C, low-frequency pink spring, which is a couple rates stiffer.
And the softer spring up front allowed it to steer better.
Right. Chaz is saying that softer spring up front prevented the car from overloading that front tire as I entered the corner. It prevented the tire from loading the outside front tire so quickly, and the car was able to steer well into the corner.
And the stiffer rear spring.
The stiffer rear spring supported the car into the corner. What do you say? And prevented that dump over effect. It also, that stiff rear spring is going to help give the car steering again because that rear is staying flatter. And then the stiffer rear spring also is going to help land jumps better, ideally. Although we'll get to that in a minute. What do you say? Again, that soft open cell foam isn't absorbing as much energy, so we need a stiffer spring in the back that's gonna allow the car to land jumps better. You got to
absorb the energy someplace.
Right. It's got to go somewhere. Now, that gets to a point where the oil piston is actually what's absorbing your energy. The spring, an ideal spring, would actually not absorb any energy. It just turns into potential energy and then pushes back. But that's a whole other discussion.
That sounds like a physics major to me.
Right. So we're going to take. We're going to look at first. Let's look at some good things that my car did. I want to point out the back left of the track had a massive off camber. You kind of came into the middle of the track. You went around a left-hand 180, and then you sent your car through a short chute and turned right uphill into this broad, tall 180. It's kind of hard to see on the video because you're looking at the surface of the track. It's hard to tell if the track is flat or cambered towards you. But I can tell you from marshalling in that back left position that the track was probably on a good 15 or 20 degree slope. And so a lot of cars struggled to turn in on that off camber. And if we look, again, this is something that the car was doing really well. That older setup I put on did really well. My car would just turn up that hill, and it carved that corner and was able to turn inside people all day long, leading into the back triple. The other thing that it did well was, again, just that steering in general. We're going to take one of the corners from the very first lap of the race, and this is the corner off that back stretch where you land the double and go around the left-hander, coming back towards the driver's stand. And the very first lap of the race, I do a great job keeping the car within the limits of that sidewall. Again, you can tell with this open cell foam tire, there's good traction in this initial sidewall. The rubber carcass is providing a lot of stiffness, and if you can keep your car on that sidewall, you can go around the corner quickly, right? And so that first lap of the race, round 4 that we put up, that left-hand corner, I think my car just takes a beautiful line. It stays within the tire. The chassis looks balanced going around the corner. It's able to steer out really well and hang on to that pipe on the left-hand side of the track. And you can see here that lines me up really well to go over the double and head into the right-hand corner, getting on the front stretch. So that's what the car was doing really well. It steered well. It steered past apex well when a lot of guys were blowing through their foams and losing time trying to get around the corner coming out. I thought my car, it went into the corner pretty well. It would apex, and as long as I stayed within the tires, it would exit really well too. Now let's look at some stuff that wasn't so good. If we take a look at that exact same left-hand corner, in fact, on the second lap, my second time around the circuit, you can see that I overjumped the double jump off the back stretch a little bit, only about 6 or 12 inches. I overjumped that double, but it makes the car hop going into the corner. And
it bounces.
Right. So that was one of the flaws that team manager Billy Mouse and I identified, is that the rear end was too stiff, and the car wanted to bounce. It didn't want to set down nicely if I didn't hit my downsides perfect. So on that second lap, again, this same corner, we can see the car, I overjumped that double a little bit, my car bounces, and now I blow through that open cell foam in the back, and the whole rear end of the car comes around. And I can't hold on to it. I mean, I do a good job as a driver collecting the car back up. I know, I see what's developing, and I counter steer a little bit, and I collect the car. But I lose probably 2 or 3 tenths of a second collecting that car up and coming to a stop in the corner compared to the first lap where I'd done the corner perfectly. So we really identified that the rear end of the car was too bouncy. We also saw that the front of the car, and we can see this in the same corner, this same second lap corner, the front of the car is collapsing mid-corner. Again, I came in too hot and I overloaded the front end, but that soft orange front spring is not holding the front suspension as flat as we'd like and causing the front end to collapse. So we saw that the rear end of the car was bouncing and that the front end of the car was collapsing in that same corner. Finally, the rear end being too bouncy, the rear end being too stiff, really affected my car on the backstretch. And now we're going to look as I land the double and try to single out. You can see 2 or 3 different clips here where my car just steps sideways, or I have to collect the car after landing the double, and I'm not able to accelerate off of the third jump and keep a smooth flow that allows the fastest lap times. Instead, you know, you can see the car land and hop up, and I have to slow down, I have to let off the throttle, collect the car back up, and allow it to just kind of roll over that third jump and then try to put the power down, rather than putting the power down after the first double and accelerating through the whole back section. So that's the things that we noticed. We noticed that the rear end was too bouncy and affecting the car going into the corners, and the front end was collapsing too much in those corners when I came in too hot. And then we also noticed that the rear end being too bouncy was losing me time in that back double, single, or triple section.
So what did we do?
So what did we do? Again, we didn't want to give up that soft front spring. We knew it was a problem, but that soft front spring was what was giving the car good steering on that off camber and around a lot of the kind of broader 180s that the course had. And we knew we were still on the open cell front foams. So what we did instead is we stiffened up the front shock package. I was running in round 4 of this race that you're looking at, I was running 3-hole pistons, 3-hole 1.4 millimeter pistons with 37.5 weight shock oil, and I went to a smaller hole piston. I went to a 2-hole 1.6 piston with 35 weight shock oil. Now that's going down in oil, but because the piston is that much smaller in terms of hole size, well, I mean 1.6 is bigger than 1.4s, but the 2 holes to 3 holes, it's a smaller piston, all right? Since we went to the 2-hole 1.6s, normally I would drop, to keep the shock about the same, I would drop 5 or even 7.5 weight oil, but in this case I only dropped 2.5 weight, and that really increased the front pack. By increasing the front pack of the car, that helped land jumps better because the front of the car is helping absorb some energy on those jump landings, and it also helps that front end when I go into a corner a little too hot, you know, that slower pack, that more pack or slower shock action helps prevent the car from dumping over the front. On the back of the car, we just dropped a spring rate. We went from a low-C pink spring down to a low-C yellow spring, which is still a step up from the white springs that I'd started on in practice, but that softer rear spring prevented the rear of the car from hopping around so much if I overjumped something a little bit, and allowed the car to just be a little bit smoother through most of the track. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. I want to remind everyone, of course, that with setup, there's rarely a wrong answer. You know, it has a lot to do with driver type and how you approach the corners. But we just wanted to give you guys some analysis, put up a video that we found to be really helpful, and then talk about the changes and what we saw in the video and help you guys go faster with your own XFactory vehicles. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.